here in Fresno. That's the time for our regular feature, the Thrift Store Record of the Week. But we got Jeff Polman on the line, and I don't want to keep him waiting, so let's go ahead and talk to Jeff right now. Jeff, are you there?
Yeah.
Hey, great. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Jeff Polman, author of Mystery Ball 58. We talked with him last year, and then he went up and did a reading at the Auberry Library, and I guess one in Clovis, too. But he's got a new book out, Twinbill, Further Immersions in Historical Baseball Fiction. And these start out as blogs, right? That's how you...
Yeah, I've published 4 books now, and they were all originally as blogs. This one actually is 2 stories. They were actually 2 shorter blogs. Usually the blogs last about a year. I'll kind of go into what they are in a second. But these 2 were shorter ones. Each one lasted about 6 months, so I call them blogellas.
Yeah.
And basically what I do is I take old baseball seasons and I replay them using the Stratomatic tabletop game. And then I create all these fictional characters and plots to relate what happens on the field. And these are kind of unique because both of them deal with racial tolerance and intolerance and kind of in the 30s and 40s. And I found them very timely with the kind of hideous political climate going on around the globe these days. And the first one, called Dear Hank, is set in using the 1938 season, where Detroit, famous Jewish Detroit Tiger slugger Hank Greenberg is. The whole story is told through a series of pen pal letters between Hank and a 10-year-old Jewish kid living in Austria right as the Nazis are starting to invade. So he's a baseball fan, and so they have kind of a back and forth through letters. And there's a lot of other things I was able to work in, such as Henry Ford in Detroit was a very, very famous anti-Semite and published editorial after editorial in his Dearborn Independent that was, blaming the Jews for everything going wrong with America. And so Greenberg, playing in Detroit, had to kind of deal with that, had to deal with the anti-Semitic vibe coming from the crowd. I mean, you hear so much about Jackie Robinson, which, of course, is an amazing story, and God bless Ken Burns. But you don't hear as much about the Greenberg tale, and there was a really good documentary about him recently. But I just felt it was a good time to get a little more into that. So if you like, I can read a...
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of add a little bit there at the tail end of what you just said. In fact, you mentioned a character. He was an actual player and then became a manager. Ben Chapman, I believe was his name, and he was just mentioned in the city of Philadelphia. Just apologized to Jackie Robinson, the family of Jackie Robinson, and they mentioned Ben Chapman. I guess he was a manager for the Phillies at the time when Jackie was breaking in. And he threw a lot of racial slurs Jackie's way, and so. Oh yeah. And it was interesting because you mentioned him as being an anti-Semite in your story as well, and so I thought there was a connection there.
There was a connection. He never changed. He was that way as a player. In 1938, he was a player,
right?
And in whatever that was, when
47,
came out in 47, he was the manager of the Phillies. So he never changed.
Yeah. You got something you want to read from Dear Hank?
Yeah, I'll read you something like this, and then I'll speak briefly about the second.
Okay.
The second part of the book after that. Okay, so this one is from early in the season. It's called, and it starts with a letter from Marky, who is the kid's name in Austria, and it's called Cracked Eggs. Dear Hank, I have embarrassment writing to you tonight. We turn off the lights in our house at 9 o'clock, so I am using a flashlight under my sheet. This morning it was announced by Anschluss officials that my father had to sell his whole egg business to an Austria man for a price that was so low it was almost nothing. This means we won't be able to stay in our house much too longer. It is awful. I was at my school when this was announced, and when I got home, I found Father and Mother sitting against a fence in front of our house. They had drippy eggs on their clothes and eggshells in their hair because a small crowd of Nazi-liking Austrians had pulled them outside and hit them many times with my father's own eggs. I wanted to get my baseball bat and find the ones who did it, but Father told me no, that we should keep quiet. Mother is on more of my side, is very angry, and thinks we should find a way to move from Austria before it gets worse. I would like it better to stay because all my friends are here, and I am almost done with my latest year of classes. I also think this egg mess was the lowest it will get for us. Uncle Zeb brings us news all the time about how things are going in Vienna and in the country, and he hasn't been saying much his last few visits, so I am not worried. Getting baseball news about you also makes me less worried. I can hardly believe you've hit 10 home runs in your first 20 games. If you keep doing that, you will hit 77 for the season. I guess you must have got that extra batting practice you were looking for. Your friend, Marky. And here's Hank's response a couple days later. Dear Marky, I was shocked and saddened to read your last letter. What kind of louts would take away someone's business, then have the nerve to publicly humiliate them? I agree with your mother. You need to move away. Believe me, I have to put up with my fair share of verbal jockeying over here. Ben Chapman of the Red Sox seems to enjoy calling me Sheeny and Christ Killer every time we play them. And when I'm at first base on road trips, the things I hear from the nearby seats are so sickening I won't even tell you them in a letter. But I swear, if someone threw an egg at me, I'd be jumping into the stands to pound him silly. I promise to keep mailing your statistic sheets and a copy of the Baseball Gazette every week. I was also able to get an extra cap by telling the team I had lost my other one, so I will send you that too as soon as I can. We will be home from our first Eastern trip on May 13th, so I'll have time then. Speaking of which, I was able to visit my parents in New York while we were there splitting 2 games with the tough Yankees. I told them about you, and they said if your family decides to move to America, they have a spare room waiting for them until they can find their own place to live. If I tell them about this egg-throwing business, they'll probably let you stay even longer. Please let your mother and father know about their offer. Best, Hank. P.S. Can you have someone take a photograph of your batting stance that you could send me? I would love to give you a tip on how to better reach those cows that you mentioned.
Yeah. And you are tuned to KFCF 88.1 Fresno, and we are talking with Jeff Polman, author of Twinbill, Further Immersions in Historical Baseball Fiction. He's written several other books that relate to baseball, including Mystery Ball 58. And just one little note there, you were mentioning about the baseball cap and how cheap the teams were in those days. You know, he can't even get an extra cap to send to this pen pal of his, Marky.
I was actually going to read that little exchange. It was very funny. I guess I can do that.
Yes, please do.
There's other letters in here that are him corresponding with different people that are trying to get him to advertise things, and people from synagogues and everything under the sun. But anyway, this one, okay. This is from Detroit Tigers management regarding this ball cap. Mr. Greenberg, this is in regard to your request for supplying you with a second Tigers ball cap for the purpose of sending it to a fan. As you know, it is not club policy to provide players with extra equipment and team apparel unless there is a specific proven need, or if the original equipment or apparel has been deemed defective. The ball club has plenty of reputable souvenir stands at Briggs Stadium and in the surrounding Detroit area where you or this fan would be more than welcome to purchase such a cap. Thank you for your understanding in this matter. Sincerely, Duffy P. Hodge, Detroit Tigers Equipment Apparel Director. Dear Duffy, sorry, but I do not understand at all. This fan I know is not even living in the United States, so was unable to purchase such a cap at a local stand. Seeing I have been the team's most valuable hitter for a number of years now, I assumed giving me an extra cap that I could mail overseas to this deprived fan was not too much to ask for. Hank. Mr. Greenberg, shipping team apparel or equipment overseas is also not something we have provided for in our team's annual budget. If you prefer, you could take this matter up with Mr. Briggs himself. Sincerely, Duffy P. Hodge. Dear Duffy, skip it and go jump in the lake.
Great.
So I do find ways to work a little humor in too.
Yes, you do. Well, do you want to move on to the next one now, or it's up to you?
Yeah. Yeah, or we could talk a little about, do a quick little thing about baseball in general. You asked me to pick a dream team.
A current dream team. Last year when we conversed on the air, we picked our all-time dream team. I thought this year maybe we'd do contemporary players and put a team together.
Okay, well, here's what I got. Let's see. At first base, I will pick Paul Goldschmidt of the Arizona Diamondbacks, who's just an amazing slugger who would probably get a lot more ink if he didn't play in Arizona. Second base, I like Jose Altuve on the Astros.
Yeah.
He was just a great contact hitter, very fast, stolen bases, and I like him because he's little. I always have a soft spot for small players, especially when they're really good. Shortstop, kind of a tie between Carlos Correa, also from the Astros, a really young, great player, or Xavier Bogaerts on the Red Sox, one of about 4 wonderful young players Boston has coming up. And third base, I'll go with Josh Donaldson from Toronto. Just a really something to watch. Very gritty and very heroic kind of player. I also like Nolan Arenado from Colorado Rockies, who doesn't, another one of these guys like Goldschmidt who doesn't get a lot of ink. Well, left field, I know they're playing him in center field, but I couldn't find a lot of left fielders I liked. I'm taking Mookie Betts from Boston.
Great name.
I'm a Red Sox fan. And he's good, and I hate to call anybody the next Willie Mays, but from what I've seen of him, he has some of that potential. He's kind of an all-tools player. Center field, I guess Mike Trout. Andrew McCutchen, I really like a lot, but there's a funny thing about him. Every time I watch him on television, he strikes out or pops up. I almost never see him do anything, but then I look at the stats, and he's always up in the league leader. So for some reason, I have a hard time choosing him. Bryce Harper in right field. Buster Posey behind the plate.
Yeah.
To me, the only catcher who really seems to be, out of this world. Left-handed pitching, Clayton Kershaw, especially after seeing what he did yesterday on opening day. Chris Sale on the White Sox, great pitcher. Right-handers, I like Jacob deGrom on the Mets. I just think he's wonderful and has that great long flowing hair. And closers, after watching what he did on opening night, Sunday night, Wade Davis on Kansas City, he was up there, it was like first and third and nobody out or something in the ninth, and the Mets were 1 run behind, and he just blew like 3 people away. It was amazing to watch. So that's my dream team.
Well, I'm probably going to show my partiality to the Bay Area teams with mine. But here it goes. Buster Posey. We had several players in common here. Buster Posey behind the plate. At first base, I guess he used to be a third baseman, but they've switched him to first base as Miguel Cabrera of the Tigers, the great hitter. We both agree about Jose Altuve of the Astros at second base, and Fresno now is the AAA affiliate here. The Grizzlies are the Houston Astros. They used to be the Giants, but last year they changed their affiliation. Now they're the Astros farm team, and it came at a good time because the Astros are looking pretty good these days. Josh Donaldson, we both agree with that one. Toronto Blue Jays. I wish he was still an Athletic. He was played for the A's, and as soon as they shipped him off to the Blue Jays, they started losing. Brandon Crawford of the Giants at shortstop for me. He's got a lot of pop in his bat, and he's got pretty good range. I think you're going to hear more and more about Brandon as time goes by. As far as my outfielders go, I don't know if they're left, right, or center. I just picked 3 in general, and I got Bryce Harper the same as you, and he's had a share of criticism. I guess traditionalists don't like his showboating, but they don't, and they call it the show for a reason. So I have no problem with him, doing a little dance after he hits a home run. Mike Trout may be the greatest player in the majors right now. And another guy who's had a lot of controversy, I guess, because of enhancing drugs, is Ryan Braun of the Brewers. And there's a Jewish connection for you. Ryan is Jewish. Sonny Gray of the A's as my righty, and Madison Bumgarner of the Giants. Both of them were sick last night and couldn't pitch. Both of them had some kind of stomach ailment, and I don't know if they were eating at the same diner together or not. But both of them were scheduled to be opening day pitchers for one for the A's, Gray for the A's, and Bumgarner for the Giants, but neither was able to perform their duties. And then Francisco Rodriguez would be my closer. And I asked you if would also pick who we thought might win the divisions, and I have your Red Sox winning the East, and with Toronto as the wild card. And in the Central, I'm going to go with the Royals again until they. And a lot of people, as far as the National League goes, a lot of people are picking the Cubs, and I'm afraid to do that. I'm afraid I'll give them bad luck. I'd like to see the Cubs for a change, make it all the way. But anyway, getting back to the American League, I see the Astros winning the West with the Rangers being a wild card. In the National League, the East Mets. In the Central, the Pirates with the Cubs as the wild card. And in the West, the Dodgers look pretty good. But the Giants are pretty good, too, so I would pick the Giants as the wild card. And since it's an even year, I'll go with Giants versus Astros in the World Series.
Okay. Well, we have some similarities. I'm flip-flopping in the East. Although I'm a Red Sox fan, I'm picking Toronto to win that division again. I just think their offense is up and down is just too frightening.
Yeah, it is.
But I'm picking Boston to be a wild card. I'm picking the team that nobody ever seems to want to pick in the AL Central, and that's Kansas City. I just think they're a really, really good club.
They're solid.
Stat-wise, they might not be the best, but they just seem to play well together and really like each other.
And that middle relief they have is, you can't touch it, It's amazing.
American League West, I'm picking Houston. And I'm picking Seattle as the wild card team.
Okay.
I think they've made a couple of real good improvements to their offense that they needed to do. And I think it's high time that King Felix Hernandez gets in the playoffs. So let's see. East, that's the Mets. I think that's kind of a no-brainer with that pitching staff. Kind of a weak division. Washington might get it together with Dusty Baker, but I don't think much of Dusty Baker as far as a game manager goes. He's very good with his players. Let's see. National League Central, I'm going to pick the Pirates. I think being in that wild card game 3 years in a row and losing two of them, I think it's kind of going to motivate them to win the division this time. And like you, I'm afraid to pick the Cubs for curse purposes.
Right.
But I'll pick them for the wild card. American League West, I'm going with the Giants, being an even year, and they just look really good to me. I'm picking Arizona for the wild card because they got Greinke and Goldschmidt, although they did just lose this A.J. Pollock guy who's very good. I just can't, in my heart, pick the Dodgers because I'm completely furious with them and the ongoing Time Warner television broadcasting fiasco that I think reached its peak yesterday when the Dodgers won 15-0 on opening day.
Amazing.
And 2/3 of Los Angeles could not watch the game on television. It's just unbelievable.
That's just terrible.
If anybody, the commissioner should be stepping in on this.
We're talking with Jeff Polman. He's the author of Twinbill, and we're talking about his new book here on KFCF 88.1.
So anyway, to get back to Twinbill, the second half of Twinbill is called the Bragging Rights League, and this is a real kind of interesting historical flip I did, where it's set in 1941, and the major leagues are black as opposed to white, and we have a team of straggling white all-stars that have to prove themselves by playing and doing well in the black major leagues. The President of the United States is 39-year-old Langston Hughes, and everything, I mean, you could imagine is reversed, and I thought it was kind of an interesting mirror effect on racism. For instance, one of the fun things, actually, if you go to the Bragging Rights League blog and go to the team roster pages, all of the teams, I think there's only about 6 of them, and 6 teams, and they're all owned by famous jazz musicians of the day. So you have the Kansas City Bassies and the Birmingham Armstrongs and the Detroit Callaways, and there are these great YouTube clips on the roster pages of various of songs done by these artists. I am going to highly recommend the book version, though, because the website is a little wonky and it's kind of hard to follow the story. You have to kind of go back and find the first chapter and then come up to the front ones. Anyway, it's all in order here. And this is, very briefly, I'm going to read you the first chapter, and you'll get an idea of what this is about. The narrator of this is a guy named Jeff Heath, who played for the 1941 Cleveland Indians, and a very good hitter. Okay, the first chapter is called All the Dirt on This Thing. Hi, folks. I'm John Jeffrey Heath, otherwise known as Jeff, starting right fielder for the Chicago Dorseys. Most of the time, at least, our manager, Luke Appling, sits me down against lefties for Charlie King Kong Keller, which I can't say I'm thrilled about, but over half the time I do get to share the outfield with Ted Williams and Joe DiMaggio, the best white hitters in the country, if you ask me. Anyway, the little time I've spent with the Cleveland White Indians in these early 1940s won't hold a candle to what we're about to go through in the Bragging Rights League. See, the Major League of Professional Ball-Playing Athletes has been going strong for about 50 years now, and the last thing they need or want is a bunch of white vagabonds like us breaking the old Moses Walker color code. But that's where President Booker T. Washington came in. Before he died in 1915, he passed on his advanced beliefs about racial equality to his son Ernest, who would succeed him in office for 3 terms before the great poet Langston Hughes was voted in. And Ernest always believed that if whites were allowed to fight for their country, like some of them did on Europe's battlefields in the Great War, and just might again if this new war in Europe and Asia actually starts, then by gosh, they should be allowed to play ball with their darker countrymen. Well, something's finally going to be done about this. Last month, when the entire Memphis Hamptons clubhouse was stricken with a horrible stomach virus during their off-season trip to Cuba, President Hughes quickly gave Commissioner Greenlee permission to establish the Bragging Rights League, and our Chicago Dorseys were born. Player-manager Appling searched high and low through the white hinterlands, from the Detroit Milky Tigers to the Brooklyn Honky Dodgers, before it was decided to let him pick the best players from our American division. From what I could see, though, we ought to be able to give those professional black fellows a fair fight. As you know, they don't stage a championship series in the MLPBA, just a fierce 16-pennant race, and the Bragging Rights League, at only 60 games per team instead of the usual 180, should be even more heated. Every major league club has its big stars, with Josh Gibson catching for the Newark Ellingtons, Turkey Stearns patrolling center for the Pittsburgh Jordans, Satchel Paige throwing speedy pills for the Kansas City Bases, and so on. With Gibson's 53 homers and 29 complete game victories by Smokey Joe Williams, the Ellingtons took the league championship in 1940 with a sterling 121-59 mark, and you can be sure they'll be ready to defend that crown. Us, well, there's Teddy Ballgame and Jolton Joe, who I already mentioned. I saw our first baseman, Jimmy Fox, belt the ball once that went farther than most of Gibson's. Cecil Travis from the Washington Club is a torrid hitter, and Philadelphia's Frankie Hayes and New York's Bill Dickey are great backstops. Bob Feller, also from my Cleveland team, is a strikeout machine, and Chicago's Thornton League will feel right at home pitching in his home park, as long as the field is in its usual chewed-up state, which could hurt the fielders behind him. I'm not saying this is going to be an easy league for us, except for the home white grandstands we'll have at Comiskey. We'll mostly be playing in front of tough all-black crowds on the road, and it's likely we'll have to lodge ourselves in white hotels in poor white neighborhoods. But good golly, I think we're up to this, and who knows, it may even earn us the right to vote someday soon. Each series will be a best-of-3 affair with its own bragging rights, and for the first one we'll be hosting Cool Papa Bell, Slim Jones, and the Detroit Callaways. I'll be back in a week with first-hand accounts of how our first series and the other openers went. For the time being, take a look at our league rosters, enjoy any music by the team owners you can find, and if you feel like it, venture a guess on what the outcome might be.
And we're talking with Jeff Polman, the author of Twinbill, which includes the poignant Dear Hank, letters between Hank Greenberg and a young Jewish baseball fan, and like you just read there, a cleverly written bragging rights league where an all-white team has to prove themselves to an all-black major league. And that's great, Jeff. Thanks so much. I just wanted to mention that Janet, my wife and I, we went out. There was a big block sale, yard sale going on here in Fresno's Tower District area. And I picked up a copy of the Bingo Long Traveling All-Stars and Motor Kings, and in some strange way, it related to your book, a movie from 1976.
That's the flip reverse of my book.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny you mentioned the Avid Reader. That's in Sacramento, you said?
I believe so. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I'm actually going to be doing a reading there on May 7th, 2 o'clock Saturday afternoon. I'll be reading from Twinbill and also from Mystery Ball. So I'm glad you mentioned that. I gave you a chance to mention that.
And also, too, before I let you go, I want to mention how they can get the book. If they're interested in getting the book. Amazon, or is there?
Amazon.com has all my 4 books. 1924, and You Are There, Ball Nuts, Mystery Ball, and Twinbill. They're all there, and they're all there, and they're all there, and they're all there.